Hello everyone, this is Jubair Khan and you are watching Joravi Nursing online classes. So today's class is about heart failure. So we will discuss today heart failure and one more topic, cardiogenic shock. So before starting the video, please subscribe my channel. If you have not subscribed my channel and you are new on my channel, please subscribe it and like this video and share to your friends. So today's topic is heart failure. So what is heart failure? Failure means what? It is unable to pump. So heart failure means heart is unable to pump the blood to the body. So heart failure is inability of heart to maintain adequate cardiac output to meet the metabolic needs of body because of impaired pumping ability. So heart failure means heart is not able to pump the blood to provide adequate blood supply to the vital organs and your peripheral organs. So overall inability of pumping the blood. Okay, so that is called heart failure. Why it is occurring? So diminished cardiac output results in adequate peripheral tissue perfusion. When cardiac output is decreased, so peripheral perfusion also will decrease. That means cardiac output will decrease. Okay, so cardiac output has decreased, so it means inadequate blood supply to the peripheral tissue perfusion. So peripheral tissues are there, it will not get the adequate blood supply. So it will not get the adequate blood supply, so that means decreased oxygen also at the tissue level, so it will lead to the hypoxia also. Okay, because decreased cardiac output. Congestion of the lungs. So when heart failure is there, that means ventricles are not pumping properly. Okay, ventricles are not pumping, so blood accumulation will be there, so it will lead to the congestion of the atrium and then it will lead to the congestion of the lungs. So what will be there? There will be congestion of the lungs and periphery may occur. If right side the heart failure is there, so fluid accumulation will be there in the peripheral blood vessels. If left side of heart failure is there, left ventricular heart failure is there, so it will lead to the lung congestions. Okay, so classification. Acute failure occurs suddenly. If heart failure is acute, that will occur suddenly. Chronic heart failure develops over time, it will take time sometimes. Chronic means it is a long process, slowly it will affect. Acute means it is for small period and it will occur suddenly. Okay, so that is acute heart failure. Types of heart failure. So what are the types of heart failure? So there is two types of heart failure. One is right ventricular heart failure, RVF, and LVF. So there are two types, right? RVF and LVF. So what will be happen? Because of two ventricles of heart represent two separate pumping systems. So there will be two separate pumping system. One is right ventricular pumping system, another one left ventricular pumping system. Okay, so right ventricular pumping system, what it will do? Here will be pulmonary artery will be there, so it will take the blood to the lungs. Here aorta will be there, so that will take to the blood to the peripheral organs. So if right ventricles are not able to pump the blood, so what will happen? So fluid accumulation, blood accumulation will be there in the right side of the ventricle. So what it will lead? So then it will be filled, accumulated in the right ventricle, then again it will go to the right atrium, then it will go to the superior and inferior vena cava, then it will again go to the peripheral organ. That means peripheral means that body fluid accumulation will be there in the body. Okay, upper side of the body and lower side of the body. Mainly you can see in the fingers and hands and legs also fluid accumulation, that is called, that we say, that is edema. Okay, if right ventricular heart failure is there. Okay, most if left side of the heart ventricular failure is there, what it will cause? It will lead to the, so it is not able to pump, so it aorta cannot take the blood to the peripheral organs, so that means it is not able to pump, so blood will be hair accumulation, then it will go, it will move up where their left atrium will be there. In left atrium it will go, then it will go to the pulmonary veins, then it will go to the lungs. So pulmonary congestion will be there. So that means pulmonary congestion means pulmonary edema will be occur in the left ventricular failure. So most heart failure begins with the left ventricular failure. So most of the heart failure will occur from the left ventricular failure, and progress to failure both ventricles. First it will start most of the time from the left side, then again it will lead to the right also. Okay, so first mostly it will affect the left ventricle, then it will progress to right ventricle also. Acute pulmonary edema, a medical emergency, results from the left ventricular failure. So I told you, when left ventricular failure is occurring, so it will lead to the pulmonary edema, because fluid will go to the pulmonary veins, then it will go to the lungs, and pulmonary congestion will be there. That means fluid accumulation in the pulmonary veins and lungs, so it will lead to the pulmonary edema. Okay, so if pulmonary edema is there, that is a medical emergency. So whenever fluid collection in the lungs, so patient will having a dyspnea, patient can't able to breathe, so that is a medical emergency. So for that we need to do some interventions. If pulmonary edema is not treated, that will occur, because suffocation will occur. Okay, if pulmonary edema is there, so what it will lead, it will have, patient will having a dyspnea, difficulty in breathing will be there. Okay, patient will not able to get properly breathing and all, so oxygen supply will be less, hypoxic condition will be there, then brain will not get the supply, and patient will go to the coma, and after that patient will lead to the death also. So suffocation will be there, so tissue perfusion will be less, so patient will go to the death. So patient will be having death if pulmonary edema is there, because if pulmonary edema is there, it will lead to the suffocation, then death, because the client literally drown is in his or her own fluids. Okay, because patient is having accumulation of his or her own fluids, because due to that what will be there, suffocation will be there. That means overall the point is, when left ventricular failure is there, it will lead to the congestion of the pulmonary system. So pulmonary system congestion is there, so it will lead to the patient may have a suffocation, then patient may die. Now forward failure and backward failure. So what is this thing, forward failure and backward failure? So forward failure, inadequate output of the affected ventricles. So in forward failure, inadequate output of affected ventricles. That means, so the ventricles is affected, so it will not able to pump the blood. So it will not able to pump the blood means the aorta will not get the adequate blood supply, and it will not give the adequate output to the peripheral organs. So causes the so it will decrease the perfusion to the vital organs, so vital organs will not get the proper supply. So that is the forward failure. And backward failure means, in backward failure, blood backs up behind the affected ventricles. So when this is not able to pump the blood, so this ventricle will fill with the blood, then again it will goes up, so it will go through the atria, then pulmonary circulation, if it is left ventricle, if it is right ventricle, then right atrium, then superior and inferior vena cava, then peripheral system it will go. Okay, and causing the increased pressure in the atrium. So when it will go the blood into the backward direction to the atrium, so it will increase the pressure in the atrium behind the affected ventricles. Okay, so this is now coming to low output and high output. So that was the backward failure and forward failure. Now we'll see the low output and high output. What is low output? So in low output failure, not enough cardiac output is available to meet the demand of the body. So in low output failure means cardiac output will be decreased and peripheral organs will not get the proper supply. So that is the low output failure. Okay. And what is the high output failure? So high output failure occurs when a condition causes the heart to work harder to meet the demand of the body. When high output failure means when a condition causes the heart to work harder. So heart has to do work so much, so that is the high output failure. So it has to do the so much hard work to provide the adequate amount of the blood to the bodies. That is high output failure. Okay, so this is the low output failure. In low output failure, not enough cardiac output. And high output failure means work heart has to do work so much. So much work has to do to provide the adequate blood supply to the body. So that is high output failure. Now coming to systolic failure and diastolic failure. So what is systolic failure? Systolic failure leads to the problem with the contraction and ejection of blood. Systolic failure means it will lead to the problem with the contraction and ejection of the blood. So where failure is with the ejection, contraction and ejection of blood. So when heart is not able to contract well, so it will not provide the ejection of blood. That means cardiac output will be decreased, ejection fraction will be decreased, ejection fraction will be failed. So that is called systolic failure. And diastolic failure means, so actually we know the two things are there, systolic and diastolic. Systolic means contraction. So contraction will be there, so it will contract, heart is contract and it will pump the blood. So when systolic failure means heart is not able to contract, so that is called systolic failure. That means ejection fraction will be decreased or it will fail. So that is called systolic failure. Whereas in diastolic failure, diastolic we know that is the filling of the heart. Okay, so systolic means pumping of heart, diastolic means filling of heart. So when diastolic failure occurs, it leads to the with the heart relaxing and filling of the blood. So it will not able to fill the blood in the heart. So that is called diastolic failure. Why diastolic failure occur? Because the heart is not able to pump the blood, so blood is not able to go to the peripheral organs. That means cardiac output decrease. Then again this right ventricular heart failure is there, so it will not able to pump the blood also. Then again it will go to the where, right side of the body. Then it will right side means right atrium, then accumulation in the body, and it will not come back to the right atrium and right ventricle. So this filling will be disturbed. When this filling will be disturbed, that is called diastolic failure. Okay, so systolic failure and diastolic failure. Now coming to compensatory mechanism. So how body will compensate for this condition? Compensatory mechanism act to restore cardiac output to near normal levels. So when patient is not getting proper cardiac output, so what compensatory mechanism will do? It will restore the normal level of the cardiac output, that blood volume it will try to restore it. How? Initially these mechanisms increase the cardiac output, however, so it will try to increase the cardiac output. How it will try, they eventually have a damaging effect of pump action. So it will affect on the pump action. How? Compensatory mechanisms contribute to an increase in myocardial oxygen consumption. So it will increase the myocardial oxygen consumption. When this occurs, myocardial reserves is exhausted and clinical manifestation of heart failure develops. Okay, so it will try to pump the blood. So it will do the compensatory mechanism. So in compensatory mechanism includes, what are the things in compensatory mechanism? So increase the heart rate. So it will try to increase the heart rate and improve the stroke volume and atrial vasoconstriction. So it will try to contract the vessels. So systolic blood pressure will be increased, that means cardiac output will be increased, and it will try to sodium water retention and myocardial hypertrophy. So these are the things will be there in the compensatory mechanism. Okay, compensatory mechanism means it has to compensate anyhow, whether it can be constrict the blood vessels, whether it can restore the water and sodiums. So blood volume will be increased, that means hypotension will not be occur like that. It has to do. Okay, so adequate perfusion it has to provide. So this, for that only compensatory mechanism is needed. Now coming to assessment. So in assessment, right and left sided heart failure. So what are the clinical manifestation in right and left side of heart failure? So these things we will see. So there is a one important point is there. Signs of left ventricular failure are evident in the pulmonary system. So when left ventricular failure is there, it is the evident of the pulmonary system is affected. Whereas right ventricular failure is there, that is the evident of systematic circulation is affected. So I told you, when left ventricular failure is there, that means it will affect the pulmonary system. Left means it will affect the pulmonary system. Right means it will affect the what? Systematic circulation. Okay, it will affect the systematic circulation when right side of heart is failed. Now coming to clinical manifestation of the right side and left side of heart failure, this we will see later. So clinical manifestation of right and left side of heart failure. So in right side of heart failure, what you will see? You will able to see the dependent edema where in legs and sacrum. So at the legs and sacrum or in whole body you can see the dependent edema. Whereas in left side pulmonary congestion, that means pulmonary edema will be there. In this condition, jugular vein distension will be there. In which condition? Right side of the failure, because this is the right ventricle, this is left ventricle. So it will, and this is the right atrium. So blood will go to the right atrium. So here will be the superior vena cava. So here superior vena cava will take the blood. It will go moves up and it will again collected in the jugular vein. So here jugular vein distension will be there in the right side of the heart. Okay, right side of the heart failure. In this condition dyspnea will be there and tachypnea will be there. In this condition abdominal distension will be there, because fluid will be collected in the whole over the body, then it will collected in the peritoneal cavity also. So peritoneal cavity will be there. So in peritoneal cavity, so abdominal distension will be there, that means ascites will be there. Hepatomegaly can be there and splenomegaly can be there in right side of heart failure. Anorexia, nausea and weight gain will be there in the right side of this heart failure. So in this, when water or fluid is collected in the lungs, so when fluid is collected in the lungs, so what you will hear? So crackle sound you will hear in the lungs. Dry hacking cough will be there. In this condition dry hacking cough will be there. Paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea will be there. Increased VP also can be there and decreased also. Increased, why it will be increased? Because from fluid volume excess. So fluid volume excess is there, so it will lead to the BP is increased. When blood is not able to pump by the heart, so it will lead to the decreased BP. So both conditions can be there. In this condition nocturnal diuresis will be there. Nocturnal diuresis means night time diuresis. Swelling of the fingers and hands, it will be available in the right side of heart failure. In this also increased and decreased way be increased fluid volume excess and decreased due to for pump failure. Okay, so these are the clinical manifestation. Okay, very important. So always question comes from here. This is very important. Okay, read it well. Okay, now coming to acute pulmonary edema. So in when acute pulmonary edema is there, so what are the symptoms you can see or signs you can see? So severe dyspnea will be there. Then when fluid is collected in the lungs, so severe dyspnea will be there. Tachycardia and tachypnea will be there. Nasal flaring, so nasal flaring will be there. Use of accessory breathing muscles, so when he is not able to get the oxygen from the nasal passage. So and respiration is affected, that means breathing is affected. So what he will do, he will do use of necessary breathing, accessory muscles he will use in these conditions. Wheezing or crackles on auscultation. When auscultation, we auscultate the lung sound. So two types of lung sound we can hear. One is wheezing, another one is crackle. Crackles definitely you will hear because fluid is collected in the lungs. So lungs fluid is, whenever fluid is collected, crackle sound it will be heard. And expectoration of large amounts of blood, ting and fruity sputum. This is very important, always comes this and this. These 2 points are very important. So whenever pulmonary edema is there, so this is the finding, it can be there. Blood, ting sputum and fruity sputum will be there. Acute anxiety and apprehension and restlessness will be there. Profuse sweating also there, and cold clammy will be there. Cold clammy, why? Because peripheral organs and these things will not be getting the proper blood supply, so body will be looking like, and it will be like cold or clammy skin will be there. And it can be a cyanosis also, but when not proper blood supply, no oxygen, then it will go to the hypoxia condition, then it is cyanosis condition. Okay, so these are the things we need to assess. Okay, now coming to priority interventions. So what are the priority management when acute episodes of pulmonary edema is there? So first we need to provide the high flow position. Whenever any problem with the lungs, patient is not able to breathe properly, so that time we need to provide the high flow position. So this we need to provide. Administer oxygen, assess the client quickly. So first you need to provide the high flow position, next you need to administer the oxygen, next assess the client quickly, including assess the lung sound. So first position, then oxygen, then lung sound. These things we need to do, and ensure the IV access device is placed. After that only we need to put the IV device. If it is there, then okay. If it is not there, then we need to put. And prepare for administration of diuretics and morphine sulfate. Then we need to keep ready the administration of diuretics and morphine sulfate. Okay, insert a Foley catheter as prescribed. If it is prescribed, then insert the Foley catheter also. Prepare the intubation and ventilator support. If it is required, then we need to prepare for intubation and ventilation support also. Then after that we need to document everything, whatever action we have done. If pulmonary edema is there, it is a life-threatening condition. So in this, what we need to do, that can result from the severe heart failure. In pulmonary edema, the left ventricle fails and eject sufficient blood to and pressure increases in the lungs because of the accumulated blood. So whatever I told, that is only written. So for that, what we need to do, the client immediately placed in the high flow position. So in this condition, first we need to keep the patient in the high flow position. Okay, then oxygen is always prescribed. So in this condition, oxygen always prescribed in the high concentration, so by mask or cannula, to improve the gas exchange and pulmonary function. So whenever coming the COPD, so in COPD you will give by the nasal prongs or low concentration oxygen, or whereas in pulmonary edema like condition you will give the high concentration oxygen. Okay, high flow rate or high concentration oxygen you will give by the mask or cannula to improve the gas exchange and pulmonary functions. Okay, then IV access device we need to keep. Okay, for that, for what, diuretics and morphine sulfate we need to give it. So why we are giving this morphine? So morphine sulfate reduce the venous return, so it will reduce the venous return whatever it is coming, and decrease the anxiety, and also reduce the work of breathing. So these are the functions why we are giving morphine in the pulmonary edema. So what it will do, it will reduce the venous return, and decrease the anxiety, and also reduce the work of the breathing. And a Foley catheter is inserted, a measure of urine output. So Foley catheter for measuring the output, how much is output and all. And monitor is used, vital signs we need to monitor, and cardiac monitor. For cardiac monitor, why? then heart rate and dysarrhythmias. So it will lead to a dysarrhythmias also. So this is a life threatening condition can occur in this condition itself. So this we need to monitor, and lung sound also we need to monitor for crackles and decrease that sound also can be there. Other intervention may include administration of digoxin. So intervention in other intervention, what we need to do? So we can administer the digoxin to increase the ventricular contractility and improve cardiac output. So, and bronchodilators also for severe bronchospasm and bronchoconstriction. So in this condition bronchoconstriction will be there. So for that we can give the bronchodilators like salbutamol and all, and for increase the cardiac output and ventricular contractility we can give the digoxin if SCP is prescribed. So these are the main things we need to do. Okay, now coming to following acute episode. If acute episode is there, what we need to do? Assess the client to identify precipitating what are restricting why if heart failure is occurring, so that we need to identify and encourage the client to verbalize the feeling, how he is feeling, whether he is able to breathe and all. So this we need to assess. So here one important point is there: instruct the client's prescribed medication regimen, which may include the digoxin can be there, okay, diuretics can be there, ACE inhibitors, low dose beta blockers and vasodilators. So these are the things. So we need to instruct the client about this medications. Okay, I advise the client to notify the SCP if anything is occurring. So he need to inform the SCP. Any over counter dose is medication, so he need to inform the SCP. Instruct the client to contact the SCP if he or she unable to take the medication because of illness. So in this condition also he need to inform the SCP. Now here important point: instruct the client to avoid large amount of caffeine. So he should avoid the caffeine found in coffee, tea, cola, chocolate, carbonated. So these everything should be avoided in this condition also. Instruct the client about the prescribed low sodium, low fat and low cholesterol diet. When pulmonary edema is also there, in that also low sodium diet, because already fluid collection is there. So low sodium diet and low fat diet and low cholesterol diet also should be advised. Okay, so low sodium is first priority. So patient should be on low sodium diet. Okay. Instruct the client regarding fluid restriction. So already fluid is there, edema is there, anasarca may be there. So in this condition what we will do? We will restrict the fluid. Okay, if prescribed, advise the client to spread the fluid out during the day or to suck on hard candy to reduce the thirst. If patient is feeling the so much thirsty when patient is kept on the NPO and all, so some for reduce the thirst he can suck on some candy and all we can provide to reduce the thirst. Instruct the client to balance period of activity and rest. Okay, so it should be balance of the activity and rest. So when how much he is doing the rest and how much he is doing the activities and all, it should be on balance. So like that, if he should not be on prolonged rest and not be prolonged activities. Okay, it should be balanced. Okay, advise the client to avoid isometric activities. So client should avoid the isometric activity which increase the pressure in the heart. So it should be avoided. This is also very important point here. We should advise the client he should avoid the isometric activities. Why? Because it will increase the pressure in the heart. So this is also very important. And instruct the client to report signs of fluid retention such as edema and weight gain. So this is very important point here. So he should inform the report. We need to instruct the client report signs of fluid retention. If edema is there, weight gain is there, so he should report this to the SCP or nurse. Cardiogenic shock. So what are the cardiogenic shocks? So cardiogenic shock is a failure of heart to pump adequately, thereby reducing the cardiac output and comprising the tissue perfusion. When cardiac output is not properly, or when heart is not able to pump, So what will be there? There will be a tissue perfusion compromising, so that is called cardiogenic shock. So in this condition, what will be there? There will be a necrosis. More than 40% of the left ventricle occurs, usually as a result of occlusion of major coronary vessels. So there will be blood collection will be there. So blood collection will be there, so it will lead to the occlusion of the arteries. So occlusion will be there, so there will be a necrosis of the left ventricle. So that is called as a cardiogenic shock. The goal of treatment: maintain the tissue oxygenation. So the main thing is we need to provide the oxygenation to the tissue, and perfusion. Improve the pumping ability of the heart. So first main thing, we need tissue oxygenation properly. So how we will? So first we need to provide the pumping ability. So we need to do the pumping ability. We need to increase the pumping ability, so it will increase the cardiac output. When cardiac output increase, so automatically tissue oxygenation will be increased. So that is the main goal. So in cardiogenic shock, what are the assessment we need to do? So hypotension can be there in this. Why? Because cardiac output has decreased. When cardiac output is decreased, so blood volume will be decreased. If blood volume will be decreased, it will lead to the hypotension. So hypotension, BP lower than 90 mmHg systolic, or 30 mmHg lower than the client's baseline. So when it is going the less than the 90 mmHg of diastolic, so that is hypotension. Or it is going 30 mmHg lower than the client's baseline. So when it is going the on less than baseline, okay, so that is called hypotension, lower the baseline. Okay, urine output means if it is 30 ml less than 30 ml, so that is called low oligouria will be there. So we should assess the whether client is able to pass the urine more than 30 ml or less than ml. So this we need to watch it. Then cold clammy skin, poor peripheral pulses is there, tachycardia and tachypnea, this is also will be there. And pulmonary congestion. Okay, so in this condition pulmonary congestion is very important, because pulmonary edema will be there. Disorientation, restlessness, confusion, continuing chest discomfort, so chest discomfort will be there. So these things we need to watch it. Now interventions. So what are the intervention we will do? So we will administer the oxygen as prescribed. So SCB will prescribe the oxygen, so we need to administer the oxygen. Administer morphine sulfate intravenously as prescribed. So intravenously we need to administer the morphine sulfate to decrease the pulmonary congestion and relieve pain. Okay, so for relieving the pulmonary congestion and pain, we need to provide the morphine sulfate. Prepare for intubation. Okay, if it is needed, mechanical ventilation and intubation, so we need to prepare it. And administer the diuretics. So we need to administer diuretic and nitrates as prescribed while monitoring the BP constantly, and BP should be monitored constantly. Okay. Administer the vasopressor and positive inotropes. So for we need to administer vasopressor also and positive inotropes, and prescribe to maintain organ perfusion. So positive inotropes means, so that will increase the heart contractility, and vasopressor means antidiuretic hormone, so it will decrease the diuresis. So that is vasopressor. Prepare the client for insertion of intra-aortic balloon pump. So intra-aortic balloon pump, like this procedure will be there for improve the coronary artery perfusion. Okay, to improve the cardiac output. So these PTCA and all we will do. So for that we need to instruct the client, or we need to prepare the client for these procedures. Monitor the ABG levels and prepare the treatment imbalance. We need to monitor the ABG analysis. Monitor urine output. Okay, so this is very important. Assess the insertion of pulmonary artery Swan-Ganz catheter to assess the degree of heart failure. So what is the degree of heart failure? So Swan-Ganz catheter will be inserted. So we need to monitor the client and assess for the insertion of this. Monitor the distal pulses maintain the transducer at the level of right atrium. So we need to monitor the distal pulse and we need to maintain the transducer at the level of the right atrium. So it should be level on the transducer should be level of the right atrium if the client has pulmonary Swan-Ganz catheter. Okay. Hemodynamic monitoring. So Swan-Ganz catheter, you can see here diagram is there. So this is the Swan-Ganz catheter. So this Swan-Ganz catheter will be inserted into the pulmonary artery. So here it will assess the pulmonary artery pressure, and here it will assess the pulmonary artery wedge pressure. So this is inserted in the capillary. So in this it will assess the pulmonary artery wedge pressure or pulmonary capillary wedge pressure. Wedge means at the level of the junction of the two arteries, that is called wedge. So, okay, so that is the wedge pressure it will assess. Now coming to hemodynamic monitoring. So what is the hemodynamic monitoring? So in this, what we will assess in hemodynamic monitoring? So we will see the central venous pressure. So what is central venous pressure? So central venous pressure is within the superior vena cava. CVP pressure is within the superior vena cava. If it reflects the pressure under which the blood is returned to the superior vena cava and right atrium. So from the right ventricle, blood is coming to that pressure is coming to the right atrium and superior vena cava. So that is the pressure is called central venous pressure. Okay, so that pressure reflects to the right atrium and superior vena cava. So that is called central venous pressure. So central venous pressure is measured with the central venous line. Okay, in the superior vena cava. So it will be measured in the superior vena cava. So its normal value is 3 to 8 mmHg. Okay, 3 to 8 mmHg. Okay, or it can be a 5 to 10 centimeter S2O. Okay, if we write in centimeter S2O, so it will be 5 to 10. In mmHg it will be 3 to 8. An elevated CVP indicates increase in the blood volume. When CVP is increased, that means blood volume has increased as a result of sodium and water retention. So when CVP is increased, so that means blood volume has increased. Why? Because sodium and water retention has occurred. And excessive IV fluids, if we are providing the excessive IV fluids, so it will lead to the increasing in the CVP also, and alteration in the fluid balance. So fluid balance alteration will be there and kidney failure may occur. Okay, so these are the conditions we need to assess. A decreased CVP indicates decrease in the circulation of blood. So when CVP is decreased, so what will be there in CVP is decreased, so that means blood volume is decreased. It may be result of the fluid imbalance. So fluid imbalance will be there. Hemorrhage is there, so then also it will be decreased. So if hemorrhage is there, CVP decreased. Fluid imbalance is there, CVP will be decreased. Severe vasodilation is there, CVP will be decreased. Pooling of blood in the extremities that limits the venous return, then also CVP will be increased. So overall, when heart is not getting the proper supply means then right ventricular filling is not proper, so that means CVP will be decreased. When right ventricles are proper filling with the blood, that means CVP will be increased. So these are the main things. So it can be like hemorrhage is there, so proper supply will not be there in the right side of the heart, so CVP will be decreased. Severe vasodilation is there, then also it will be decreased. If opposite of this, like more blood supply means CVP will increase. More water and sodium retention, CVP will be increased. Okay, so these are the things. Okay, if kidney failure is also there, then also CVP will be increased. So measuring the CVP. So how we will measure the CVP? So the right atrium is located at the mid axillary line at the fourth intercostal space. So right atrium will be where we need to assess. It will be on the fourth intercostal space of the mid axillary line. The 0 point on the transducer needs to be at the level of right atrium. So like this is the fourth intercostal. So at this level we need to keep the transducer. Okay. So and client should be supine with the head 45 degree. Okay, head of elevation with the 45. So patient should be like this. Okay, supine and 45 degree elevation, that means supine with semi-phallus position. Okay, for CVP monitoring. So this is very important point. Okay, supine and head of bed elevation with the 45 degree. Client need to be relaxed. He should be relaxed. Note that the activity that increase the intrathoracic pressure, such as coughing, straining, will cause false increasing in the reading. So patient should not go for any activities such as that increase the intrathoracic pressure. What is that? Coughing, straining. Okay, this should be avoided during the procedure. If client is on ventilator, so when client is on ventilator, the reading should be taken at the point of the end of expiration. When client is on ventilator, so that reading should be taken on the expiration. When client do the expiration, that time only CEP should be monitored. Okay, so this is very important point here. Okay, so where we should take, when we should take the CEP, when if client is on ventilator, or at the end of the expiration, at the point of the end of the expiration. So question can come, the when we should take the CEP when client on ventilator, at the starting of inspiration, at the last point of inspiration, at the starting of expiration, at the end of the expiration. So when we need to take end of the expiration, at the point of end expiration. Okay, when expiration is going to end, so that time itself we need to take the CVP. So to maintain the patency of line, a continuous small amount of fluid is delivered. So we need to maintain the patency of line, so continuously fluid will be delivered in the that line. Okay, continuous small amount of fluid is delivered under the pressure. Okay, it should be under the pressure. Now coming to pulmonary artery pressure. So what is pulmonary artery pressure? A pulmonary artery catheter is used to measure the right heart indirect left heart pressure. So it will be mainly measure the right heart and indirect left heart, both pressure it will measure by the pulmonary artery pressure. So pulmonary artery wedge pressure, what is that? Is also known as pulmonary artery occlusive pressure. So it can be a PAWP. So it is a PAWP, PAOP and PCP, pulmonary capillary wedge pressure. Pulmonary capillary wedge pressure, pulmonary artery wedge pressure and pulmonary artery occlusive pressure, both are, three of them are same only. Okay, so the measurement is obtained during the momentary balloon is inflated on the pulmonary artery. When balloon is inflated in the pulmonary artery, so it will denote the pulmonary wedge pressure, and it reflect to the left ventricle end diastolic pressure. So when end diastolic pressure, it will reflect to the that pulmonary capillary wedge pressure. So whenever balloon is inflated, what it will do, it reflect the left ventricular end diastolic pressure. So what is the normal value of this PAWP? It will be the 4 to 12 mmHg. Okay, so normal is 4 to 12. When elevation is there, elevation may indicate left ventricular failure. So when it is elevated pulmonary wedge pressure, so it will indicate the left ventricular failure or hypervolemia or mitral regurgitation or intracardiac shunt. Whereas decrease, or if it is decreased, it means a hypovolemia and afterload reduction. So these are the things. This is very important. Okay, so normal 4 to 12. Elevation means left ventricular failure is there, hypovolemia is there, mitral regurgitation is there, and intracardiac shunt is there. If it is decreased means hypovolemia is there, hypovolemia and afterload reduction is there. Okay, normal right atrial pressure range. Normal right atrial pressure is there, which will be 1 to 8 mmHg. So right atrial pressure is 1 to 8 mmHg, that is normal. Increases occur with the right ventricular failure. If right ventricular failure is there, so the blood will go to the right atrium, then it will increase the right atrial pressure. So it will be on the 8 mmHg. Pulmonary artery pressure. So pulmonary artery pressure range is 15 to 26 mmHg. So pulmonary artery pressure is 15 to 26 mm Hg, systolic by 5 to 15 mm Hg diastolic. Okay, so that means systolic will be 15 to 26, okay, and diastolic will be 5 to 15. So in normal pulmonary artery pressure is 15 to 26, that will be the systolic, and diastolic 5 to 15. So this is the normal pulmonary artery pressure. Now coming to mean arterial pressure. So what is mean arterial pressure? This is approximation of the average pressure in the systematic circulation throughout the cardiac cycle. There will be a average pressure in the systematic circulation. So mainly MAP must be between 60 to, at least it should be 60 to 70 mm Hg for adequate organ perfusion. So for getting the MAP, mean arterial pressure, there is the formula is there. What is that? Systolic BP plus 2 into diastolic BP divided by 3. So this is the formula. What is that? Systolic BP, that means SBP plus 2 diastolic BP divided by 3. Okay, this is D. So systolic BP plus 2 into diastolic BP divided by 3. So this is the mean arterial pressure formula. So by this formula you can take it out. So, okay, so today we have seen this heart failure and cardiogenic shock, and this pulmonary artery wedge pressure, what is the normal range, and CVP, what is normal range for CVP and all, how to measure, what is the position for CVP measuring. So these things we have seen in this. So in this video this much only. So we will meet in next video and we will discuss the inflammatory disease of hearts, pericarditis, endocarditis and all. So please watch this video fully again and again. If you don't understand at one time, please watch it again and again, and subscribe my channel and share to your friends also. Okay, thank you all of you. Thank you.